Welcome back to Day 2 of the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. Enjoy your session, and remember, complete the survey for each session that you attend. These surveys will be sent to you via email at the end of each session.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Melody and Archer, and I'm one of the moderators. Welcome to the TWC Virtual Workforce Forum. You are in the session called TWC Cybersecurity Efforts and Their Impact on Workforce Program Security. So I hope that's where you intended to be this morning. And Valerie and I are your moderators, and we'll be in the background monitoring the question and answer panel that is on the right-hand side of your screen and handling issues that may arise. We also have Paul, who will be handling issues that you have with WebEx, and there is a number in chat, and if you all cannot see that, I will post that number again for Paul. And let's see, you can type your questions into the text field and hit send, and we will go through a question and answer period at the last 5 minutes of this session. The session ends at 9:30. And if we don't get a chance to get to all of your questions, we'll have information at the end for you to contact one of the presenters. So please note that there is a large audience today, and all of the attendees will be in listen-only mode. Just so that you aren't going to be able to unmute yourself. And if you, again, experience any technical difficulties, just let us know. So we invite you to sit back and relax and enjoy the presentation. And our first speaker will introduce the panel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Peden. I'm the Deputy CIO for Information Technology, Infrastructure, and Support at TWC. I'm very glad to be here this morning. I want to thank you for attending our session. I have three very subject matter experts around the topic of cybersecurity. I'd like for each of them to introduce themselves, but we'll have Chris Bunton, Greg Robinson, and Josh Kuntz each presenting today. What we're trying to give you is a layout of how TWC IT department has worked in our area to help secure our environments for our staff, both within the TWC programs. We also have been working very closely with some of the workforce boards to look at the cybersecurity programs throughout the entire workforce system. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and hope you guys gain some background and some information that you need to not only help secure your workplace, because we feel cybersecurity is a team sport and we need everybody involved to make sure that that happens. And so today's presentation is really intended to give you that overview of what we've been doing, and then also hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do in your local area that you work in and even at home to help secure your environment. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris Bunton.
Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing? Great. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm with some passionate experts, Greg Robinson, Josh Kuntz, and Jeff Peden. Cybersecurity is a team sport. Today's landscape is ever changing, and the threats are getting more and more pervasive as we come up with mitigation, and countermeasures. The threats get more advanced. So it's a cat and mouse game, and it requires everyone to be vigilant. Gone are the days when security is probably just an IT issue to protect computer systems, given the enormous risk fending off cyber criminals and cyber folks who want to do harm and perform malicious activity, it's a concern for everyone. It's critical that cyber risk strategy be built from the ground up. So what we want to talk about today, as Jeff said, is some of the things that we're doing to shore up our security posture. And this is an ever-changing landscape. So when the bad guys find ways to circumvent and go around some of these measures, we will adapt again. So it's a dynamic response, dynamic state, but there's many threats that we'll get into. Okay. So I'm Chris Bunton. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services. And the gentleman can introduce themselves a little bit more. Greg manages all the server operations and the O365 tenant. Josh Kuntz, who's our CISO and over security. So particularly with O365, this has a lot of security features built in that I want to talk about that we've started deploying this last year that helped us as we moved during the pandemic going home and helped us to secure our workstations while we're away from the office. But as I said, the landscape is very pervasive, right? We have identity theft, attacks on our children, attacks on banks, retail data hacks, mobile hacks. Just because we're moving into the cloud, that does not mean the threats are not following us to the cloud. So I want to make sure we understand that. And business email compromise, which is just a plethora of different attacks, from your phishing, your targets, your spear phishing, your whaling, etc. Okay. So some of the protections that Microsoft O365 has. And we don't have time in this session to go through all of them in detail, but we will pinpoint a few. Defender for Endpoint, formerly Defender ATP. Defender for Identity, formerly Azure Advanced Threat Protection. Defender for Office 365. Safe links, safe attachments, anti-phishing, Microsoft Cloud apps for security. Conditional access policies, which includes multi-factor. And then Exchange Online protection. Last few weeks, Exchange has been in the news due to some vulnerabilities that were exploited. So these protections, if they were turned on, could have mitigated that risk. Okay? So business email compromise and advanced threat protection. Did you know almost over $13 billion are lost a year due to these types of attacks, according to the FBI. And exactly what are they? You know, in the pandemic, we've been working remotely and away from the office, and that required us to have a lot more electronic transfers, right? Because you weren't going to the bank and so forth. Well, these type of attacks are being exploited. Okay, the malicious links, right? The establishing a rapport, the Nigerian scam, right? And just other ways to steal your personal information. You know, fraud is just at an all-time high. You know, I'll share with you, I was a victim of fraud last month, right? So the attack is real. There's coming at different areas, and I want to talk about some of the things we're doing to countermand that attack, okay? Right, so there are things you can do. It's a team sport. One of the things that we've had success with at TWC is advanced threat protection, which includes our safe attachments and our safe links. Advanced threat protection is a cloud-based email filtering service that helps our customers against known malware and viruses. Protects customers against real-time threats. So when you click, it actually takes your URL and does a scan. So when you're using safe attachments, most PDFs or Word documents, it does a scan. And you'll see a message like this if you click on that document while the scan is in process. If your attachment is found to be unsafe, you'll get a message like this. Okay? Again, it's trying to prevent you from opening an attachment that can infect your computer. That's safe attachments. Safe links. So the safe links replace the clickable URL, okay, with the following safelinks.protection.outlook.com. This link allows Microsoft to scan the link for malicious content. So when you get those email and you're wondering if a link is safe or not, just take that question away from you, okay? Once a link is clicked, if the website is found to contain potentially malicious content, you will be taken to a warning screen. Users will not be able to continue to the website and will not be able to infect their systems. You'll get a message like this. The website has been classified as malicious. Okay? As we move into the cloud, I know some of the marketing might have given some of you the impression that the cloud is secure and more safe, and it can be, but that does not mean we let our guard down. We still got to take necessary efforts to ensure our systems are safe. Again, security is a team sport. Team members are often the weakest chain in security, but they also can be your greatest assets through training. One of the things we do here in TWC is regular security awareness events where we go over this type of information in detail. And security team does an excellent job in going over modern threats and countermeasures. Next, I want to pass the mic to Greg Robinson, who's passionate and very well versed in O365 tools and runs our server operations and has been very instrumental in bringing a lot of the security programs and tools to TWC and helping to implement them. So Greg?
Greg, before you start, can I interrupt quickly? So one of the things I didn't get a chance to say earlier or failed to mention is the stuff that this team is going to talk about today. Some of it are features and functions of the Office 365 applications that your agencies or your organizations might be using already. And what we've done is make sure that we took advantage of those features that are already available and already part of those tools. So if your organization is using Microsoft Outlook, you should ask your administrators whether or not these features are available or they've looked into deploying them. These are not new tools that we had to buy that Chris was talking about. These are tools and features that are part of the Office 365 suite. And Greg's going to talk about some other features and things that we've been working on. And Greg, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but please take it over from there. And introduce yourself.
No problem, Jeff. Hi, good morning. I'm Greg Robinson, Server Operations Manager for TWC. I'd like to talk about multi-factor authentication and data loss prevention this morning. So multi-factor authentication, what is that? We refer to it as MFA, and normally you need two things when you log in. You do this all the time. You have a user ID and a password. So MFA just adds an additional factor or piece of information that you need to log in. If you're doing online banking, if you're, you may even be doing this at work already. It may be pretty commonplace where you get, maybe you get texted a code or something like that. It's this additional factor to authenticate. So why do we need it? The big reason is make it harder for the bad guys. So, you know, the bad guys usually have half of your information already. They have your email address. So they potentially have your login ID, and that's what it is for Office 365 anyway. So they've got half. And getting your password, that's really not that hard. So we really need another way to help us protect that, all that stuff that's in Office 365. It's not just email. It's going to be SharePoint and OneDrive and all the other tools that we use in Office 365. So what are those additional factors? Well, here's a few that we use. The telephone, you can get a phone call. You can get an automated voice call prompting you to authorize your login. You can get a text message to your local mobile phone that'll give you sort of an ID or a number that you key in. And then we also support the smartphone app. You can install that on iOS or Android. Android is pretty handy, and it really lets you just click a button and authorize your login. So if you get any of these and you haven't logged in, well, then there's a problem. You don't authorize it. So when are we using this? Well, we're using it when we're accessing these Office 365 resources when we're off of the TWC network. So if you're sitting in the office, you don't get prompted for MFA unless somebody's trying to hack your account. But let's say you're at home and you're checking your email or you're getting into SharePoint, OneDrive, or OneNote. Then you would be prompted for MFA. Now, you don't get prompted for it every time. We have it configured in such a way that it only prompts every so often. And this is really just to, again, make it harder for the bad guys. If we see, or not we, if the service sees someone, say from China, trying to log in using your account and your password, it's going to prompt them for MFA, which they're not going to have. It's going to make it a lot harder for them to get in. Now, it's not impossible for them to get the MFA token. There are ways to get it, but it is very hard. It takes someone who is much more skilled at hacking, and not just your average person who could get a hold of your credentials and get into your account. So we're about 95% complete. I want to say that all of our TWC employees are currently covered by MFA. We have a few things that we have to clean up to call this done, but it is for all of our normal employees, they do have it. We actually went through with each division and worked on this. We socialized this with each of them. We let their directors communicate down and gain cooperation for people to register for MFA. Next, I want to talk a little bit about DLP, data loss prevention. It's also something that we're deploying in the cloud. This is not something that we've deployed yet. We're in the process of doing this. So what is DLP? Well, it's a set of policies that can protect sensitive information. Essentially, these policies include rules that identify information and actions that can inform users and then prevent the accidental sharing of this information. So real basic scenario, let's say someone's going to send someone an email and it's got social security numbers in it. DLP can help protect that information. It has ways to detect that information and then prompt the user to do something or block it. So where is it protecting this information? Well, in our case, this is the cloud version. There are different brands and flavors of DLP. They can be deployed at different places, put it on your desktop. In our case, this is in the cloud. It's going to be protecting data in Exchange or Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and the desktop versions of Excel and PowerPoint and Word. So what type of information does it protect? Well, these are just some examples. It can protect a lot of things. There's a lot of different types of information built into Office 365 that is predefined. So these are the basic one: credit card numbers, bank account numbers, ID numbers, passport numbers. Social security numbers is probably the most common thing that people are familiar with. So this is just sort of what a DLP policy is made up of. You have locations where you apply the policy, so that would be SharePoint or OneDrive. And then you have rules that are conditions and actions, right? So the condition might be if there is 50 social security numbers and something, we're going to take an action, and that action might be to block it and not allow it out, or it might be to force encryption on that particular thing if it's allowed. So the conditions, you have to determine what you're looking for and when you want to act. You know, the conditions, they focus on the content, which is, you know, what's in the message or the document, and then the context, like, well, what are you doing with it? Are you saving it in a SharePoint folder, or are you trying to send that outside of the organization? So actions, when the content matches a condition in a rule, then you apply an action. And the actions I've kind of talked about, we could block, we could encrypt, we could prompt the user to say, allow them to override whatever it is. Maybe they have a business need and they can type in what their business need is and then move on. But it just depends on what we're trying to protect, where it is, the type of information it is. And those are all decisions we have to make up front to build these rules. So examples of what we could do, again, restrict access to content in OneDrive and SharePoint. We could, the email sender could receive a policy tip. It could pop up on the screen and tell them, you know, what they need to do. It could provide them with a notification or an override, give them an opportunity to override it. Here's kind of some examples of what you might see, you know, if you tried to say send a message or save something somewhere that one of the rules caught. And these would tell you, they give you some detail on what you need to do. And these are configurable. We can put in these, you know, what we want people to do. So where are we at with our DLP implementation? Well, it's already built into Office 365. It's already implemented. It's there. But it's not really turned on. We have to develop the policies that take the actions. And so we have to determine what our business requirements are and what locations do we want to protect. We also have to determine what type of sensitive information we're going to be protecting. From there, we can go on to implement DLP. That's all I have this morning. I'm going to be passing the mic over this morning to Josh Kuntz. He's our CISO. I'll let him introduce himself, but thank you for listening.
And again, Josh, if you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. Again, I want to circle back to my previous comments for Chris. Everything that Greg talked about are pieces and parts of the features of Office 365 that you get through the Microsoft Cloud. We're using the government cloud solution for our environments at TWC. But again, if your organization is using Microsoft Office 365, the features that Greg discussed and provided more information on are features that are available to you. I'm going to pass the mic now officially to Josh. Josh, thank you for letting me interrupt you for just a moment. Please introduce yourself.
No problem, Jeff. My name is Josh Kuntz. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the agency. We're going to go through a couple items. Here's the list of the tools that we utilize. This kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of the security program that we have at TWC to protect both the data that we have and the networks and environments that we're providing out both to you and internally to our staff. One of the items that you see here is data loss prevention. We talked a lot about the data loss prevention in the Office 365. That we also have an endpoint data loss prevention for keeping files that contain that sensitive information or that confidential information from being offloaded from a computer directly. And there are exceptions to that. You can, for business justifications, and monitor and track those on an annual basis to ensure they're still justified. But you see, it's a lot of different things, from our intrusion prevention, our DLP, our web content filtering, which is a constant care and feeding kind of item, our vulnerability scanning, our security incident and event monitoring systems, our logging, our deep packet inspection. That's our daily systems that really give us those alerts on what's going on, and then our preventative measures like disk encryption, the data loss prevention, the antivirus software. Advance the slide. Maybe I missed how to advance the slide.
I've got it for you.
Hit the space bar, Josh.
Just click on the screen and then use the space bar.
So, to give you an idea of some of the metrics, I talked about that web proxy, that content filtering. We average about 3 million blocks on whether it's for data loss prevention, malware blocks or based on some sort of content tagging, things like online gaming, that indexing for that. That seems like a lot, except it's less than 1% of our total traffic. So we don't block as much as, we allow about 99% of the traffic, but we do have that many blocks. And those are all different types of systems, whether it's an active click or you've moved onto a page and then it has an automatic click that tries to block those things that are trying to, adware space and that kind of thing that might have some malware in it. We do have some automated malware infection detection through our Office 365 our Windows Microsoft Defender, and it does some auto infection detection and removal. We get about 90 of those a month. On our endpoint data loss prevention, which we talked about, we average about 120 sensitive record data blocks from being copied external media monthly. And this, as we talked about the tickets and the team sport, this number is actually already dated. Since the pandemic, our number of tickets has significantly increased. Chris talked about this. The bad guys are getting better and better and more prolific, and so we're now running somewhere between 400 and 600 tickets a month on average. So it's a lot of things for the team to look at. Oh, one of those things that we talked about was that business email compromise and awareness training, and how do we get that information out, because still the number one way for people to have their email compromised is through phishing. And how does that, so a phishing campaign, someone would send out a lot of emails. They either, there's three different methods. One is just mass. They're working on statistics. Those are fairly easy to spot because they have poor grammar, poor sentence structure. They may or may not make sense. It may just be an email with a link, URL link that says, take a look here. They may be as sophisticated as trying to play on current events. There was an active shooting in North Austin today. Click here for the latest news update. There's also spear phishing, where they do a little bit of research and try to target a company or an individual group within a company or organization with a specific type of email. For instance, they may do a little research and figure out who your CEO's name is. They know what your email structure looks like, and they'll spoof an email from your CEO with a very similar looking email address and requesting that you do something. Hey, we have an emergency at the office, and I need you to purchase 10 online gift cards for this event that we're having, and send me the codes from them. Those kinds of things happen, and people respond to it because there's a sense of urgency. And then there's whaling, which is to go after maybe a CFO or a CEO because they have the authorization to approve purchases or release of funds. And so they'll target them specifically, and they may even target them based on some of their online profiles and get specific information so they can try to target that individual. So the impacts of successful phishing campaigns, one of the more, it happened last year. Buda ISD had a purchaser who got phished. That purchaser, the people that were phishing were very specific. They provided this individual specific information about the insurance program for the organization, for the ISD, and that there was a new account that they had to pay their premiums to. Looked all very official. They changed the payment account information, and it wasn't until the actual insurance company contacted them several months later saying, hey, you've missed your last 3 premiums, that they realized that they'd gotten phished, and tens of thousands of dollars were funneled off because they were paying their insurance premiums to a malicious actor who defrauded them through the phishing campaign. So we have we do phishing simulations. so that we can train our staff on how to spot those phishing campaigns and how to report them. We set up a what I like to call the easy button. It's a button within our Outlook toolbar that they can report suspicious email, and it pulls the email out of their inbox and sends it off to our team to investigate. This contributes to the high spike in our tickets because it's very easy to report, so we have a lot of tickets. It auto generates a service ticket for us as well. And that those phishing campaigns have gone, we did a fairly good job of spotting. Just on our baseline, we had about a 20% rate of spotting. After the first round of the simulations, we were up to somewhere around only maybe 10% of folks were actually falling for those emails. And my team gets very good at creating things that look very legitimate. Around the holidays, doing shipping notices, and then around tax time, doing things that deal with the IRS, and then we even targeted our executives with a message that looked like it was from our executive director to the executive board, asking, telling them about a new compensation program, and so that really does, we really try to simulate those kinds of scenarios that the malicious actors would, and train our people on how to spot those. Another item that we talked about is those ransomware attacks, and this is a very specific kind of malware that basically blocks off you from your data, and that can be infiltrated through phishing, it can be infiltrated through social engineering, through someone leaving a thumb drive in the smoking area, and you have an employee who picks it up and sticks it in their computer and infects themselves. But there's a lot of impact to this. You can permanently lose access to data, and if the data is not properly backed up, you've actually lost that data. You can lose control of your critical systems, and there's a high cost of recovery and instant response. Very famously, several years ago, the transportation division in Colorado got hit, and it cost them millions and millions of dollars to recover from that because they had to bring in resources from all over the country in order to get the malware out of their systems and recover their transportation systems. This was back in 2019. There was a North Texas ransomware incident. There were 23 local entities that had a common service provider. That common service provider used a common set of user credentials for all of those folks, and when they got compromised, they were able to compromise all of those other entities and lock out their data. Some of them had good backup procedures and were able to recover, wipe and recover their systems. Some of them did not, and there was a statewide disaster incident response effort in order to respond to that. So it's a very serious thing, and there's a number of things that you do for prevention of that on the preventative side and also on the recover side for keeping the malware out, and then if you get attacked, having the backups and the recovery process and procedures that you've exercised in order to wipe and recover those systems that did get locked. And the one that most of y'all are probably well aware of is that the agency has undertaken a Texas Cybersecurity Framework assessment for all of the board areas. So the Texas Cybersecurity Framework consists of 46 control categories that were derived from NIST 853, the Texas Administrative Code Chapter 202, and the Federal Information System Management Act. So those areas, they combined into a easier to digest set of controls and control objectives. Those are the objectives that the boards are being assessed against. All 28 workforce solution boards are undergoing these maturity assessments. These are not audits. This is not a compliance item. This is not, you're not getting gigged for not having compliance. This is to establish that baseline so we can understand the overall risk of the state and the individual risk of the boards, and then help guide the boards on what things to work on next. How to improve that maturity of their program so that they can protect that data that we're being entrusted with by the citizens. These assessments are free to the boards. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, after you explain what's going on with the boards, would you explain how TWC actually uses the same Texas Cybersecurity Framework to do assessments for our program as well?
Absolutely. As Jeff famously likes to say, we eat our own dog food. So we undergo one of these assessments every 2 years, and it's very detailed, and it goes down into all of the NIST controls under those 46 control objectives within the agency's program. And then from that, we develop our security plan for the next biennium on what things are the highest priority for us to address. And so the maturity is rated on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being there's no control in place, and a 5 being continuous process improvement. And between there you have ad hoc, repeatable, defined, managed, and then continuous process improvement. So those are where you can see the progression of maturity of a control, where we're from not having a control in place to having a control in place that you continuously improve. For us and for the state, the goal is to have everything at a maturity level 3 or better. Maturity level 3 is defined, so you have a process in place, process is followed consistently, and it's documented in policy and procedure. So we had a few areas that we fell below a 3. And so those are focus areas for us as we move forward in this biennium to improve the maturity of our program in order to get those above a 3. This will be the same for the boards. For all those controls that you are below that defined level, you'll want to develop a security plan in order to, what are the actions you're going to take in order to get that control up to that level of 3. And that doesn't mean it has to be done immediately. And there's different time frames in that. Some things, maybe you have a good process in place and a good procedure, but it's just not well documented. You don't have a good policy on it. Well, that means that it's a shorter duration. It only takes human cycles in order to develop those policies and processes. And we're trying to put together some working groups with the boards to collaborate on those things so you don't have to do it all by yourself. We're also making the security guidelines that were developed for the ABA contracts available to the boards, and as soon as our rewritten security manual is approved, we're going to make that available to the boards as well as an example of how to do policies that follow the 46 control categories under the Texas Cybersecurity Framework. That way it gives you a good example. It's not going to be a cut and paste, but at least gives you a starting place to develop those policies from. Some things may take longer. It may take the purchase of equipment or services, and we know that you have to budget for that and then go through a procurement process. And that may be a 1 to 3 year process in order to get that. The point of the assessment is to understand where you are and then map out how you're going to get to where you want to be, instead of reacting to the next audit or the next event or the next security attack. It gives you a plan to march forward to and give you a good structure to orient towards, and also gives your especially for your CEOs an understanding of what it's going to take to get to that point, and how they need to budget and allocate resources to make sure that they can get the programs up to that level. So with that, we're ready.
So one of the things before we get into questions and answers that I want to just add to what Josh said. So again, this is another area that we're working across, not just the TWC IT and TWC agency security program, but trying to find ways to benefit the Texas workforce system and the security of that system, and that those TCF assessments are intended for that. So again, working together, it's one of our main themes that you've heard today, we can improve the security for all the programs and all the workforce system together. So with that, we'll thank you for your time and see if there's any questions. And we are open to questions maybe about personal security with your phones or PCs at home, since everybody is doing more work from home now. We want to make this interactive, so please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the question and answer or raise your hand.
Yeah, and let me just add that many of the things that you will learn if you go to one of the security awareness events that we hold quarterly is things that can help you in your personal life as well. Questions? And Melody, would you read the questions, please?
I'm looking at the question and answer pane, Chris. So far, I don't see any questions that have been put in the question and answer pane.
I think the only one was, will the PowerPoint that we present be available? I do believe that is going to be available.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, we want to thank everybody for your time today. This is a, oh, hold on.
Good morning, this is Valerie. There are some questions coming in. So the first one is, how difficult is it to obtain a job in cybersecurity with a degree in it?
So I can take that question. The cybersecurity is a growing field. The getting a degree is a good step towards that. Having IT experience to match that helps a lot. I know with the state, a lot of those cybersecurity jobs require at least some level of related experience. And there are a lot of cybersecurity jobs available nationwide. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million jobs that are unfilled in the cyber field. So it is a growing field.
Josh, would you talk a little bit about the certifications that might help someone?
Absolutely. There are a number of certification organizations, EC Council, ISACA, and ISC Squared are the big ones. There's Security Plus is a good place to start through EC Council, depending on what type of cybersecurity you want to do, whether it's on the incident response side or the governance risk and compliance side. You can diverge into more technical areas, things like certified ethical hacker or certified pen tester, where you could go into the more forensic strategic side in things like certified in information security risk and compliance, or a certified information security auditor. So there's a lot of different certifications out there, but those three organizations, EC Council, ISACA, and ISC Squared, are all certification organizations under that. And to the question about, do you prefer a degree or industry certification?
Okay, so the next question is, any plan to protect the VPN with multi-factor authentication in the future?
Chris?
Oh,
Greg, go ahead, Greg.
Well, I would just say that currently we do for some users. It's not for everybody. In terms of plans for the future, yeah, I believe so. Chris will be able to answer that better than me, but it's not that difficult to extend it to everyone, and so it does make a lot of sense if you're able to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, we've expanded our VPN capacity. We have quite a bit more capacity now. So the short answer is yes. As I mentioned earlier, the cat and mouse game, right, is always dynamic. So once we get to one level, we'll have to continue, make sure we tighten when the bad actors find ways to exploit any attack vector, which can be with one of the VPNs, as the question is alluding to. So we do have some plans to continue tightening our security posture and address that.
Okay, and the next question, is there a timeline when the board collaboration will begin?
I'll start with that, and then I'll let the guys jump in. We've been actively working with the Workforce Division as we were going through setting up the assessments for the different Workforce Board areas. And we'll continue to do that. And then, as Josh mentioned in his presentation, when he was talking about the assessments, we are going to provide materials that we think can help all workforce boards to develop standard operating procedures, policies, guidelines. We'll provide some templates and some information that we use, and we're going to work formally with the boards too. Now, there is discussion about having some kind of group that would be formed amongst the boards, almost like a users group for security topics and security professionals within the boards. That has not started, and that's going to be something that the boards kind of have to work on their own timing. But TWC IT is actively working with the Workforce Division to make sure that we're coordinating and working towards the same things. Any other additions to that, guys?
No, that's what I would say. That we're working through Workforce for that.
Okay, so the next question is the DLP something that only certain staff can set up?
Well, it is administered by the Office of 365 administrator, if I'm understanding the question. It can also be set up only for certain staff. It is actually how we're testing it currently, so it can be applied to different groups. We have had a few issues doing that. We did note that we made a rule change that was only supposed to apply to one person, and it actually ended up applying to everybody. We had to roll it back. Fortunately, we're able to do that before anyone notices. One of the big problems with doing things in there is we don't really have a way to test everything. So, our testing is we try to limit it to groups of people. And if in this case there was an issue or something like that happens, you have to be kind of quick about rolling it back and catching it.
Thank you, Greg.
So see, there's a question about the UI fraud claims. We've been working on this quite a lot, implementing a number of different programs and services to try to limit that fraud activity, so that these folks understand. Please do report those UI fraud claims to our Regulatory Integrity Division through the online portal. The source from those is actually from other data breaches. So whether it's the OPA breach, the VA breach, comptroller's breach, Experian breach, where a lot of personally identifiable information was collected, those identities are for sale on the dark web, and the fraud actors are actually making these claims en masse. They are taking large blocks of personally identifiable information and pushing out or attempting to make fraud claims in huge volumes. Most of these we're catching. We're instituting a number of new detection tools to try to correlate these things for both identity and looking for fraud indicators within the claims. But some of them do get through, and you'll get a notification that you may have made a UI claim. If you did not, please report it. That helps our Regulatory Integrity Division weed those things out, stop those payments, and also improve the tools that are detecting those fraud actions.
Yeah, and I'll just add to Josh hit it right on the nail. The bottom line is if somebody feels, thinks, or suspects that there's a fraudulent claim been made in their name, they still need to use the UI fraud line or online portal. That's the best way for them to report that to TWC and get action taken. Any other questions and answers, or questions? We'll try the answers. Okay. I don't see anything being typed in, and so again, we want to thank everybody. Cybersecurity isn't always a flashy, glitzy title that people want to attend, but we really do appreciate everybody taking the time. It is really important. I know that we see stories on the news all the time of people who've been compromised, had their identity stolen. We've heard about the hacks in the news. Both Chris and Greg and Josh talked about different things that have happened in the past. And really it is something that takes every employee and the organization to work together to secure our networks and to secure our workforce system. So we thank you for your time this morning. If you have any questions or concerns after the event, feel free to reach out to us. I believe our email addresses are part of the information that's made available to you, so we'd be glad to take questions after this as well. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank all of you for your wonderful presentation, and I want to thank the audience for being here and attending. Just so you know, you will be receiving a survey via email, and we ask that you please complete that as soon as you receive it. You'll get one after every session, and we really appreciate your feedback. So thank you to the panel, and thank you all, and have a great day.
Enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thank you for attending the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. We trust the information was beneficial and will help us better serve the people of Texas. We will see you next year.